one. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. As we start out with a question all the time, this one is so rhetorical, but it's got a really cool spin for an answer, and we're going to unpack that today. So the question is, do you want to make more and work less? Now, I've yet to find anybody that says, nah, I really want to make less and work more. So rhetorical question, but the answer, like I said, I think is going to be a little unconventional today. So we're going to unpack that today with our guest, Laura Gisborne. How are you today?
Good, Dave. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. And you're the founder of Legacy Leaders Global and also Limitless Women. So fill us in on what those two are and what's going on over there.
All right. So we are a philanthropy first organization, which is a little unusual. We get kind of pigeonholed in often with business coaching groups. And really what we do is we're a community of women predominantly who lead with our businesses as a vehicle to change the world. And not just talk about that, but really put action behind that and have programs that we work with in the nonprofit sector, sharing not only our dollars, our tithes, but also our time and our talents. And so what we found over the years is that we really learn from for-benefit organizations because they're so mission driven, right? Everything that it's the nonprofit sector is really about a vision and a mission. And in the private sector, it's a little easy to get caught up in how do we make more, right? Like in that
Sure.
piece, we're kind of on the wheel of like, if we could just make more, we'd be more. But there's
Yeah.
some more going underneath that. Yeah. So that's what we're up to.
Wow, that's awesome. So philanthropy first is already kind of unconventional right there because there's a book called, People Over Profit. Some people think profit should be first. Some people think people should be first. So you're taking it a different angle of I have fun saying that word, philanthropy. I always want to say philanthropy. I don't know why, but anyway, if I do, I apologize in advance.
Yeah.
But on that, when you think about that philanthropy first, what does that mean for you specifically on your end?
Yeah, well, I think, again, it's a spiritual principle. It's not like I came up with this idea, but we look at how one of the biggest objections that I see in leadership, and I know you do a lot of work with leaders, Dave, as well, is that this idea that someday when I get there, I'll make
Yeah.
a difference. And all of us are living our legacy right here and now, whether we're aware of it or not. So the actions we take each day really create the results that we have, that really creates kind of our energetic thumbprint, right? And our legacy in the world. So what we look at is instead of someday when I get there, making a difference, why don't we put that first? And then see how we can have each of our leaders, each of our community members see themselves as catalysts for change. And I've got a little bit of a secret behind that, if I can share it with you.
Yeah, for sure. We always like secrets, but we won't tell anybody, okay? Because
We'll
it's a
start with a
secret. So
secret. Start
if
with a
you're
secret.
listening, don't tell anybody,
Don't
okay?
tell me.
So
Okay. So what underlies this is really that this poverty consciousness that lives in the developed world. And I say in the developed world because my work has taken me really all over the planet. And when someone's truly in survival mode, Dave, when they're trying to get food on the table, they're trying to get their kids an education, they're trying to get a roof over their head, they're not feeling like, am I good enough? Right? They're feeling like, how do I actually create sufficiency? So what happens often in affluent nations is we don't feel privileged. We don't feel like we're really affluent. We feel like we came from humble beginnings, working class families. We're trying to make ends meet. We heard a lot of messages around not enough. And we
mhm,
often feel like we're not enough. We're either, my hair is really bright red. If somebody's listening to this may not know that, but I'm too bright, or you're too dark, or you're too white, or you're too tall, or you're too short, like whatever it is, this whole thing of not enough and too much.
sure.
So what happens for us in the developed world is that we have lost sight of how good we have it. And what I find is that when we have someone, and I'm just going to use silly numbers here, but if I find someone who's a leader and says, I want to make a difference, I say, okay, great. If you want to have our support, we have lots of education programs, we're going to invite you to donate 10 cents, and we want you to run your business on 90 cents. And let us know how that goes. And what happens is in the stretch and in the giving, they start to become expanded in their capacity. They start saying, I'm actually better at this than I thought. What if I gave away 20 cents and I'm running on 80 cents, right? But they
Sure.
start to actually see their capacity to expand, and they no longer feel like they're not enough. They feel like they're actually a catalyst for change, and it begins the healing of that poverty consciousness.
So poverty consciousness, I almost, when you said that, I was thinking it totally different because I was thinking like I have to like it kind of aligns with the philanthropy piece. So
Mhm.
I mean, there are a lot of people in survival mode, and we, like I said, or like you said, Laura, we don't even know that's happening. I mean, it's probably a big blind spot because let's be real, a lot of people listening right now, wherever they are in the world, they're listening and they're generally have their heads down, trying to find a way to pay the rent, hire
100%.
that next person, find
Yeah.
that new customer, right? There's all these things. How do you get somebody like that to just the first thing has got to be like acknowledge that there's other people besides you. That seems like a really hard piece. Would you get somebody listening to just get their head up and realize that there's other people around?
Yeah. Well, depending on the age of your listener, Dave, most of us, we get to this age, I'm almost 60 years old, we have a wake up call or we have a series of wake up calls, and it can come in, the forms of, I talk about this in the book about the D's, either a death of somebody you love that makes you realize, like, hey, time is not infinite. I got to get it together here. Or you experience a divorce. I got a divorce when I was a younger woman from my first marriage, and it was so painful. It shattered everything that I expected. And I had,
Sure.
kind of plan of action was like totally shook. Or it can be a disease, right? You can get a diagnosis. I was working with one of our clients earlier today who um, received a life-changing medical diagnosis, and she came through that and came to the other side. And so now her leadership is in sharing, and she's a doctor. So it's actually interesting sharing different modalities, the thing that actually helped her, which was not the traditional path. So when you get a wake-up call, you start to realize, what does my life mean? And I think the
Yeah.
whole conversation on legacy and philanthropy feels like there's going to be, don't take offense because you're a white guy, but some old
Sure.
white guy is going to take
Yeah.
care of it, right?
Yep.
Like some white guy is going to, Warren Buffett's going to write the check, or Bill Gates is going to write the check,
Sure.
right? So you're going to like look for them to do it. But changing the world doesn't happen that way. It happens with a small group of individuals who believe in a cause, and they get together and they make a difference. We make a difference kind of one person at a time, and that starts to snowball when we're on track with our service.
Oh, and that's great. And I think that's really a big blind spot, Laura, for people because I feel, and I know for myself, I think, you see this problem, whatever it is, poverty, whatever the problem is, and you look at it and go, this is so big, there's no way I can do anything about
Wow.
it. So I'm just going to stay under the radar. I like what you said about starting with a small group. Is that kind of where Limitless Women come in? Where would somebody go if they're listening and they're just like unsure about how to start something, what the
Yeah.
next step is? Where would somebody go?
Well, thanks for asking. I appreciate it. It's a generous question for you to ask. So limitlesswomen.com is a place where you can find resources in our work and what we do. And we have a podcast and we have a YouTube channel and all the how-tos, lots of things there. We've been giving away free gifts on Friday for 8 years. So we've got a big old library of business tips. And the thing that I'll say is that most of the people that I meet who run in this world of making a change with their work. I have a lot of people that work in the nonprofit sector, and that's their calling, right? And they're out there doing that work on the ground. Those are the heroes in my world. There's a lot of people in the private sector that do their work and they think, again, someday when I get there, but there's very few that match together. And I think in my own experience, I grew up in a childhood that I say is tough by American standards, right? Not by global standards. I had a roof over
Sure,
my head, I had running water, I had access to free education, but I also was sexually molested for 7 years. I also was beaten on a regular basis. I went through a lot of different things that created a normal of almost no self-esteem. People see me today, they have no idea, right, how I was, because I've
sure.
been healed for the love of God and people that saw me when I couldn't see myself. So I think it's when you raise your hand to help one person, you don't know how that one person is going to be able to change not only their own life, but the
Sure.
life of others, right? So that's the ripple effect of our work.
So I want to try to get as practical as possible because I'm guessing if there are people listening that if you ask them, what are you passionate about? Probably in the top five things, nothing philanthropic would show up, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So for somebody that's like that, that really this is kind of their first exposure to it, or this is the deepest dive that they've ever done on this, Laura, how
Yeah.
do I find out what effort, I think, because again, it'd be easy to give to the homeless, give to the hungry, give to your local church. It'd be
Yeah.
there's so many easy ones, and none of those are wrong. I'm just curious how somebody would find if there's a way for them to find what their passion would be for a philanthropic effort.
Yeah, it's a great thing. So have you ever had a hardship in your life?
Sure.
Personally? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So is there something that you can think of that you've gone through that was hard? And I'll
Gotcha.
just use in my own life, I use domestic violence as a situation. So I grew up in a family of domestic violence. So naturally, my adult relationship, my first, serious adult relationship, I was living with a man that beat me on a regular basis. And I didn't know that wasn't normal. It required somebody saying to me, hey, it's not okay to keep coming to work with bruises on your face. We're really worried
Sure.
about you. We want to help you get help, right? So one of the things that we look at when we're encouraging people to find a cause they care about is find something that's close to home, no pun intended, for you
Sure.
personally. And
Yep.
some people, like, it's so funny, my elephant here. We have people that love the elephants. We have people that really care about their pets. Their pets have really changed their life. They love that. We have people that care about overseas missions. We have people that care about lots of different things. Here's where it comes together, Dave. As a community, I thought when we first started this, if we could raise $10,000, I'd be all excited, right? And then we
Sure.
raised 35,000. And then I said, okay, let's see if we can over 5 years give away 250,000. We got to 5 years, we'd given over 600,000. And it
Wow.
wasn't, listen, we're not doing big. I'm here, I'm working from my house, just like you, talking on the thing. But we have these little events and we do programs and we do a little bit here and a little bit there. We don't have a big check. It's
Sure.
$10 there, but collectively, our community has raised over $750,000 to
Wow.
change the lives of people that they don't even know often, but they
Yeah.
know that someone saw them and gave them a hand up. And it's such
Sure.
a privilege and an honor to be able to pay forward our dimes or
Yeah.
our dollars or our tens, whatever we got, so
Sure.
that somebody else's journey can be easier. It's a very spiritual, energetic that happens. And we live in that state of abundance instead of living in the I'm not enough. How do I hustle? Just
Sure.
just with stophustling.com. It's not about the
Sure.
hustle. More about when you said, how do I make more and work less?
Yeah.
There's some of the secret sauce that I'm sharing with you now.
Awesome. That's so cool. Well, and I think that people seem to be I'm a real black and white thinker, so I have like two sides. It's hard for me to find the middle. So I think about, okay, I want to help somebody, and I think, well, they need X or Y or Z, whether it's my time, my talent, my resources, they need something. But there's so many different ways that you can give. So I think we need to get out of that box of thinking writing a check, because sometimes writing a check is actually the easiest, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't require much work, but it's not, to me, volunteering my time is way more fulfilling than writing a check. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious, have you experienced that, or where do you land for yourself personally on that?
Thank you for asking. So, I did my first volunteer work when I was 23, and I was working as a receptionist basically first, and then as a legal secretary in a law firm. I was going to law school at night and, working during the day, putting myself through school. And something came across my desk about CASA, which is Court Appointed Special Advocates for Foster Children. And that touched my heart. And I thought, my first thing was like, well, who am I to give? What do I have to give? I literally was like, living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't think I had any money to give, but I could give my
Yeah.
time. So I went in and got trained to be a guardian ad litem for foster kids and work with them on creating, a pathway to safe, permanent homes. That, like, once I started, Dave, I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
It's like the best candy ever, right? So I think that
Sure.
this thing in our world, we're very aware of strategic philanthropy as a business tactic. What I mean by that is giving to look good versus the whole, like, spirit and feeling of we get to give. Like, you just imagine that we get to be in a position to serve another human, because it means we've got something to give, right? So there's that whole, again, that empowerment, the healing. I think a lot of um, mental struggles, that people are dealing with on a daily basis is we're chasing the wrong rabbit,
Yeah.
and I
Wow.
like your work around purpose and seeing
Yeah.
about, people first and some of the things I was reading on your website and looking at
Yeah.
how communication is so important to you. it's the human connection that is more important today than it's ever been,
Sure.
especially as people are living in a lot of fear of where we're going as a species.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I want to go back to something you said. I don't want to slide over that because many people say I have to go to work. I have to do this. I have to do that. I love transitioning from I have to I get to.
Yes,
You know, it's
yes.
so powerful to say I get to do this, whatever that is. And I think about like in my earlier in my career, one of the companies that I owned, you know, we didn't give money, we would give time. And when I
Nice.
had 20 people on my team, we'd take a half a day and go volunteer somewhere to
Mhm.
just fulfill that personal thing for myself. But also, boy, the team loved it. You know, obviously the people receiving it loved it. So I just want to encourage people that are listening. It doesn't have to be this big grand thing. I mean, we were doing half a day, probably twice a year, you know, but it was getting people moved in that direction. And once that motivation and that momentum started, it seems to, you know, really keep on. So, in your Stop the Spinning book, moving from surviving to thriving, do you talk about that piece much in there? Because I feel like we're surviving and then we want to get to thriving. There's got to be some things that push us. And I'm just curious if the philanthropy part is one of them.
Well, I'll tell you what, that book was my first book. And I realized, and I thought I was going to write a business book, and then God had another plan for my life, right? And things kind of one thing took to another. But I talked through that book about the power up formula, what really took me from being, 98 pounds and anorexic and living with a guy that beat me on a regular basis and working two jobs and never having any money, which took me from there to having financial freedom and having a healthy family and having a healthy body and having a beautiful
Sure.
community for years. Like that's two different planets when you actually look
Yeah,
at the
for sure.
differences. But what were the steps? And so what I share there's my power up formula, which is the power of 1 minute is the first chapter, overflowing abundance. There's like 50 pages. It's all about making money and how you make money and how you get related to money and how you heal your money stuff. Think about the poverty conscious stuff, walking
Yeah.
in faith, embracing synchronicity, real connections. I mean, the chapters spell power up so I can remember them. But the reality is that, this is the thing. It's not about, there's no like quick thing. I was just talking to somebody about this, one of these books, like the Book of Awakening. This is not my book, by the way, but,
Yeah.
what does it look like for you to have a daily practice and be aware? And this isn't about religion. This is about like, how are you really connected to who you are and why you're
Sure.
here? And if you've
Yeah.
been gifted to be a founder, I think your audience is a lot of entrepreneurs and
Mhm.
founders, people in
Yep.
HR, people in positions of leadership. If you've
Yep.
been gifted with little extra goods, we have an opportunity, but also an obligation to protect these, be good stewards of that, right? Be good stewards of these extra goodies and pay them forward. But we got to take care of ourselves first in order to be able to do that.
Well, and I feel like it's back to the simple put your mask on first and before you can put on the mask for the person next to you
Great.
in an airplane. And I know early in my career that obligation wasn't really there. I was like every man for himself, right? So I don't know if it's an age thing or what, but and I want to unpack your story when we come back from the break because you started in a restaurant and then you went to real estate and then somehow wine got involved. So I want to take a break here, but when we come back, I want to unpack that with you. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm honored to be hanging out with Laura Gisborne, the founder of Legacy Leaders Global and Limitless Women. And so part of this journey where she started was, again, as we talked about before the break, was the restaurant to real estate to wine. So fill us in on that journey because it sounds kind of fun. I mean, it sounds like a fun one. So I don't know if I'm getting in
Yeah.
trouble here or not, but I'm excited to
Oh,
learn.
but I so appreciate, because people will be like, tell me the story. I'm like, okay, it's like a 30-year journey. So how
Yeah,
much time do we have, right? Like, let me try to go really fast and
right.
tell you.
Exactly.
Well,
Yep.
I married, I put myself through school, waitressing, bartending, like a lot of kids, and I married into a family business. My first business was a restaurant, and that was in Dallas back in the day. And we went on from that to open up two more restaurants. My husband and I, our family had 8 restaurants together. So it was just, we all were like working all the time. It was before we had
Sure.
children. Just that was the living, right? And
Yeah.
we sold those businesses because we wanted to have a business where we could spend more time with our kiddos. And so we moved to Arizona, went on a timeshare tour. This woman said, "You should get a real estate license. You'd be great at this." I was like, "I know restaurants and I know law. I don't know anything about anything in between." But got a real estate license, started selling timeshare, blah, blah, blah. Life kept going. So real estate, what happened was that I went from real estate sales to real estate investing in the real estate development, which has been really still something that we do today. That's been a great blessing for our
Sure.
family. Learned, it's just an education that I didn't grow up with, but it was available. It was an important thing. There was something to learn. And there's never a bad time to invest in real estate if you know what you're doing, but you got to learn what you're doing, right? So real estate, and then my husband, I would say my current husband, hopefully my last one, we've been married 25 years in January, long time.
Congratulations. Yep.
This guy from the Midwest, who's got an accent just like you. He's from Minnesota.
I don't have an accent. You're the one with the accent. Let's just call it what it is, Laura. Come on, that everyone in
Come
Texas
on,
has an accent. Come on.
you Midwest guys. I love these Midwest guys. So he says to me, I want to take over the wine business. And I said, "You don't even drink wine." But we've been to a tasting room in California, and we walked in and he was like, "Why would I ever go to a bar for like $6? I can drink all I want." But we spent 700, you know what I mean? While we're there, he's like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
like the model." So
Nice.
we opened up a tasting room in Sedona in 2005. And we were looking at our cost of goods sold, right? If you're a business guy, you understand that the numbers of product-based business
Sure.
are very different than a service-based business. And so we got a winery license. We had some land out in the country. Next thing you know, we had a wine club. We were shipping to 37 states across the country. you
Wow.
know, and he said, "Okay, I don't want to work in the wine business anymore." I'm like, "Okay, great. Where are we going next?" So it's been, one thing led to
Yeah.
another. It's been a beautiful ride. And I'm somewhat retired now, although I'm in the process of opening up a spiritual center and a yoga studio here in Bastrop. So that'll be
I
business over
love
time.
hearing people. I love
Yeah.
people saying they're retired and they're opening up this and they're opening up
Business.
that and they got this 10-year plan. So retirement obviously means different things to different people. But
100%. Yep.
so in this journey, when you think about it, if you look back, people always want to know, like, what are a couple things that you learned that you wish you knew, or, what are some things that really kind of popped for you? Because again, we're so stuck in the day to day that not a lot of people stop to work, on their business. They're so busy working in it. So just curious, looking back on that time, if there's anything in specific, Laura, that you like really wish that you knew back then that you know now.
Again, a lot, so much, Dave, more than I can tell you now. But I can tell you, because what comes to mind first is that I
Yeah.
wish I had known as a young woman. I was teased with my community that I was often a man trapped in a woman's body, right? I was very focused. It was such a driver. As if you have me do a disc assessment, I'm
Yep.
totally like, do, and then
Yep.
ask. So I did that, and there was a cost to that. The cost of my first marriage, there was a cost to my health, there was a cost to the mother that I wanted to be. Some things that I would say, if I would go back in time, I would hope that I would be much more aware of the preciousness of the time with the people I love.
Sure.
I
Oh,
think that's probably the most important thing that I think anybody can ever learn, is that that's something you can't replace. And that, the
yeah.
second piece along that same lines, Dave, is, I have a person who does not have, I don't have a lot of regrets. I mean, I've just had a remarkable life, way, way, way beyond anything I could dream of as a child. And
Yeah.
I wish I had been kinder with my words. There are times when I spoke to people and I didn't understand the power of my words.
Sure. Yeah.
Today, I'm a speaker and an author. I'm very aware that people are listening and that I want to be conscientious to use my superpowers for good. But we
Right.
all have that. We have the power of what we say, what we write, how we communicate. And that's why your work is so important. And one of the reasons I was excited to be with you today is that in conscious communication, in kind communication, we can actually lift each other up and create much better results than we ever can by being punitive.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy because communication, is so important, and it's such a under educated piece. Nobody really spends much time talking about it. People just assume that you know how to, communicate. But at the end of the day, 85% of the success of our, day-to-day activity isn't our drive, our education, or our passion. It's our communication. And people struggle with that because they want to educate themselves, they want to do all these things, but generally, how to better communicate with somebody isn't on that list. And if it
Right.
is on that list, I think it's to your point, Laura, excuse me, is kindness is not really making the top five. You know, I
Yeah.
want to be a better salesperson, I want to persuade, or I want to be a better orator, or I want to communicate in public better. Saying, "Hey, I just want to be kinder with my words," is not really that like sexy. That's not really that like in vogue, but boy, it's so powerful. Where did that come from for you? I mean, how did I mean, how'd you think of
That-
that? It's just like such a great spot to be.
Thanks. So I would say, again, I didn't grow up in a family where people were kind
Yeah,
and in any way, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I talk about this actually in the book. And so if it's helpful for someone, I talk about what I did as a young woman is that I went out and I learned to practice speaking kindly to strangers. It was
mm,
literally like a conscious act I had to bring into my behavior to see how I could learn to use my voice in a nice way. I knew what it felt
sure.
like to be spoken to
Yeah,
painfully, but I didn't know, and I didn't have role models for kindness. There was a girl in my high school who was the sweetest girl ever, Dee Dee Carpenter, and everybody loved her. And she was just this kind light. And I thought, well, like, instead of what would Jesus do? I was like, what would Dee Dee do? You know what I mean? Like, I really was like running around as this young person. And just,
sure.
it started with like a little bit here and a little bit there. And I, like you, have been really blessed to be super successful in lots of ways in life, but it came with a choosing of what mattered. And what mattered for me was and still is today, who can I be as a partner for my husband? Who can I be as a parent for my adult children? Who can I be as a girlfriend? Who
Yeah,
can I be as a business partner for our clients? So, I don't go into a relationship with someone unless I really am sure that we can be together creating a difference for the world, right? So who can I really stand beside as a partner that's there?
yeah,
It's a lot of consciousness and a lot of therapy, a lot of personal development, landmark education. I mean, there's so many different pieces, but it was like, I think if I'm alive and breathing, God's not done with me yet. So what else do I need to learn, right?
right.
What's next?
Well,
Yeah.
and I love that there's two pieces to it, excuse me, because we've been talking about the purpose, but we've also talked a little bit about the profitability. So in your, you've owned a bunch of businesses, and they generally looked, at least on the surface, don't know anything more than that. They appeared to be profitable. They appeared to be have some purpose around them. Um, for people listening that maybe are one or the other, is it hard, like a black and white thinker? For me, it's hard to think of them as being both. I feel like I either have to be profitable or
Yeah.
purposeful. It's
Yeah.
hard for black and white thinkers to think of it in both ways. So, do you have
Yeah.
any like help for me? Maybe
Yeah,
someone
I
else
love.
is
Thank you
listening,
for
but it's
asking.
like, how do you
Yes.
do that both? How do you get both of those? I'd love
All
to
right.
learn more. About
Let me rewind really quickly. So I started being asked to speak. I was not a speaker. I was not an author. I was like, put a fork in me. I'm done.
Yeah,
Wasn't anything I was looking to do, but the invitations kept coming. And so the first brand of what has grown into what we do today with legacy work started as Powered with Passion. People would say, how do you do it? How do you like serve on Habitat for Humanity and be at the school board and raise these kids and have a healthy marriage and, work out? How do you do all this? I was
right.
like, I
Yeah,
follow what I'm passionate about. And that's how one business led to the next business. And I'm like a lot of entrepreneurs. I love the start. I love the start. I love the creativity. I love to
yep,
build. And I want somebody else to do operations, right? So I've
yes,
sold 6 of my companies because I know what to do to build an owner independent operation because I don't want to do day-to-day operations with the exception of my partnerships. I love that. I love
sure.
that creative process because it's new every day. So I love that. So Powered with Passion was not the sexiest brand, but it was a little sexy because we kept getting spammed by XXX websites. This is back in the day. Okay. We first started. It
Mhm,
was
sure.
passion was not the right word to use. So we moved to passion, purpose, and profits. And what we really stand for today is how do you create a business that uses its profits for purpose. We all need sufficiency, right? We all need to
Sure.
take care of ourselves, and we want to have all the abundance. We have all the toys, and whatever rocks your boat. The boat rocks your boat, go get a boat, right? But you want that. And if you get to a certain level of abundance and financial sufficiency, what I found is that there's often this yearning for a deeper connection to your purpose. And so
Gotcha.
this piece around like, what's the impact? What's the legacy? That's not something that somebody who's in survival mode is thinking about. They're
Sure.
thinking about buy. But the
Right.
secret to get there, FYI, starts with giving. Giving causes growing. So it's a little bit, pardon my French, it's a little bit, ass backwards. Because you
Yeah.
think someday when you get there, you're going to give. But if you start to give when you think you don't have it to give, you start to
Sure.
increase your abundance. It's really bizarre, but it works every time.
So I am, tell me if this is right, because I think about we start with a purpose
Mhm.
and then that creates a profit. And quite frankly, that then brings us all the way back to a purpose again. And it's
That's
just
right.
kind of repeat, it's rinse, wash, and repeat, right?
100%. Yeah. It's a great
Awesome.
business model, right? I mean, I think that there's giving can't happen without receiving, right? Receiving can't happen without giving. So there's this beautiful energetic that happens when we're in the act of giving, we're actually receiving, and vice versa. When we're receiving, which is another thing that keeps entrepreneurs out of success, I will tell you. They're not asking this question, but I will tell you, I get asked it all the time. So why is somebody not profitable? Why are they not having success? It's not that they're underfunded, because you can have venture capital and still be part of the 85% of young business owners or mature business owners who don't make it. It's not about the
Yeah.
cash. It's about really having clarity in the systems and the purpose and the why and the mission of the business, because that's something that will live way beyond your day-to-day operations. So making money, when I say making money is generally the easy part, it sounds a little blasé to say that. They're like, oh, easy for you to say. Well, no, it's not easy for me to say. I'm telling you that making money is a result of great systems and service delivery.
Yeah.
Having a mission focused business that's actually here to live beyond you is powerful work. It's worthy work,
Sure. Sure.
different kind
Wow.
of work, we're just making cash.
Well, and I think you bring up a great word as we start to land the plane today. I mean, I think about clarity, like you just said. I mean, there's plenty of people that are having a clue, right? I mean, my parents used to tell me there's three types of people. There are people that watch things happen, there's people that make things happen, and then there's people that don't know what's happening, right? And it's like
I
the
love it.
clarity piece is
Yeah.
so getting so much more important, whether it's clarity,
Mhm.
intentionality, purpose, whatever your word is.
Yes.
But boy, without that, you don't really have the bandwidth anymore to just kind of put it in cruise control, not think of where you're going to be, asking somebody, where do you want to be in 6 months or 12 months? You know, they don't have a clue. I mean, it's crazy. And I get it. It's a hard question, but do you try it? Does Limitless Women and Legacy Leaders Global, do you guys bring clarity to people that are struggling with that?
Thank you. If I had time, I would run back in my room and grab my Money Loves Clarity T-shirt. We think that whenever somebody has a call with me, we call it a clarity call, because here's what I know: when we're clear, we can take action that gets results. When we're not clear, we're like hustling and moving around. We're like a crab. We're going sideways, right? We're trying to figure it out. So it's
Right,
better, in my opinion, to take some action and have it be the wrong action. And that's where you're going to get people like myself that have been an entrepreneur for decades and have multiple companies and had exits and all that yummy stuff. It's because I was willing to do the things that other people were not willing to do. And I think that that's the piece that a lot of entrepreneurs are hardworking. They have a calling on their lives, but they don't always have
yeah,
the courage to take the actions. And what we
yeah,
find often, Dave, in our world, I don't know if it works like this in your world, I would imagine it does too, is that the action brings a new level of clarity. But you're going to get
right,
clear about what's the next action. Then you take the action. Now you have a new level of clarity
right.
versus meditating and praying, and God gives you all the answers.
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't just happen, right? It's not like you at the end of the internet, you've like arrived, right? You get to that level of clarity, whatever it is, and then there's the next clarity. I mean, my book was about improving customer experience and strengthening the team. Well, if you think of these two entities on in your business, you can get clarity about your customer experience, and then you do really good there, well, then you got to take that same clarity to your team. Then you got to bring
Correct.
it to your P&L and all the things like you were talking about before. So I
Circle.
love talking about this, and I love telling people right at this spot that, as we land this thing, don't jump into your next piece. Because if you jump into your next podcast, if you put this down and say that was awesome, great stuff, if there's not a clarity, like a real something, that you are wanting to do next, I feel like we didn't connect with you. There hopefully is something that, Laura's mentioned here that is going to really burn within you. And I want to end this with a tip of the day. So share with us something that maybe we've talked about. Maybe it's something that's burning in your heart, Laura. But what would a tip of the day be for somebody listening today?
I think it always comes back for me, Dave, the reminder of our timing is not God's timing. And whatever God, the divine source, that which is greater than we are, if you're a black and white scientist, hang in with me. What I'll say to you is that when we are kind and patient and gentle with ourselves, we create space, and we need space for creativity. So in order to really be fantastic at what you do, you've got to create space for it, right? So just going on with the next busy is not the same thing as pausing and listening to what's available and understanding that your timing is unfolding in the way it's meant to unfold. And so you can look at somebody else and compare them and be like, okay, wow, that person's so much farther along, but they're just on a different journey. You're on your journey. Be patient with the
Sure.
process.
And if you can't take time for yourself, wow, that then yeah, obviously, and I struggle with that. We're both high D, high I's on disc. We both realize that. And it's like, man, I want to just get stuff done. I want to
Yeah.
just accomplish things, right? So sitting with myself doing nothing in my that I think I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit and do nothing. That's like really hard to do. So then I'm like, all right, maybe I'll think, maybe I'll pray, maybe I'll this, maybe I'll that. But
Yeah.
just sitting there existing is like really hard.
Mm.
So that's awesome information. I love what you shared. So thank you for doing that. Laura, if somebody is interested in learning more about anything that we talked about, the Limitless Women, your podcast, your book, your Legacy Leaders Global, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
I think we gave you, or we're going to give you a link that you're going to be able to share in the notes for laurafreebook.com.
Okay,
You can opt in and
awesome.
grab a free copy of my book. And I'm really pretty easy to find. If you Google Laura Gisborne or you look at limitlesswomen.com, there's lots of ways for you to connect with us. And we would love to support you however we can.
Awesome. And just one last question for us guys in the audience. I hear limitless women, but I
Yes,
did see a couple guys in the pictures.
there are
So
some guys that show up, some brave souls. Yes.
there are some brave souls, but whether
Yes.
it's the Limitless Women or the Legacy Leaders Global, again, I don't think gender is an issue here. But please, rather than, like I said, jumping into your next piece, just sit with this and really what comes to your mind? What's one thing you could take away with? I hope that you will do action to that item, make it intentional action, and keep us posted. We're always here for you. Laura's here for you. I'm here for you. And again, thank you so much for sharing some time with us, Laura. I loved our time and can't wait to keep learning from you.
Thank you, love. Such an honor.